Why do we need to fund this ageing relic from the past anyway? And I'm not talking about just the BBC this time. Hi, it's me again. And there's one thing the BBC does that I don't know. I just said there's one thing the BBC does. There's plenty about the BBC that I don't understand. But there's one specific thing that was mentioned in this article that the BBC does that I just don't understand why we have in this day and age. And that's the World Service. Why do we need that? I understand that donkeys and donkeys years ago, it was handy for overseas Brits and soldiers to keep up with the latest news. There's a thing now, I don't know if the BBC have heard of it or not, called the internet. And that is how most people, expats or soldiers or whatever, overseas, keep up with the news. And plus TV is broadcast all over the world now. So British soldiers abroad can watch BBC News if they want, Sky News, GB News, whatever. It's no big deal, is it? So why do we have the World Service and why is this headline a thing? BBC chair warns World Service in jeopardy as he urges Sunak to take over funding. I mean, let's face it, the one actual reason for the World Service to exist is to be able to spread British propaganda to the farthest flung reaches of the world. And if it's directly funded by the government, that's exactly what would happen, right? I mean, it says here, look, Richard Sharp warns Russia and China are outspending our World Service investment by multiples of thousands. Russia and China, those countries that don't like to put out Oh no, that's wrong, isn't it? Russia and China love to put out propaganda to the world. So we need competing propaganda. Or we could just let it be and focus on our own country rather than spreading our stuff around the world. Wind your neck in, basically, isn't it? Financial pressure means that we have now reached a crunch point. Richard Sharp suggested the BBC World Service, the world's largest external broadcaster in terms of reception area, could be in jeopardy without a significant funding boost. Until 2014, the UK Foreign Office funded the World Service in full, before then Prime Minister David Cameron transferred budgetary responsibility to the BBC and to licence fee payers. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. If the BBC want to offer a global news service broadcast all over the world, then they should pay for it. If the BBC can't afford to do that, then stop broadcasting it. That's why they've got the problem with local radio now. They can't afford to run a local radio. They're making loads of changes to it, and with the hope to one day cancel it completely and just have it online for people. And the same with BBC News. That's changing. The main news channels are changing loads to save costs. Why do they need to spend millions of pounds of TV licence fee payers' money to broadcast it out to the world when there is a thing called the internet? It makes no sense at all. I've never understood the World Service in the modern era. As I said, in the past, yeah, it was probably quite a useful thing. We don't need it. Just get rid of it. You don't need it. The BBC says it now covers more than 3/4 of funding for World Service funding from the licence fee, equating to around £300 million. Well, that's an interesting figure, £300 million, isn't it? Because the BBC are always saying in all the press releases about the TV licence fee that you see, they can't make their £3.7 billion a year they get from licence fee stretch, and there's a £300 million black hole in their finances. So if they scrapped off the World Service, they'd be back in the black, wouldn't they? Why do you need it? Now, Mr. Sharp has insisted greater investment is needed for the World Service if it is to continue competing on a level playing field. He added, the BBC reaches 3/4 of audiences in countries from India to Indonesia, but is still losing out to the likes of Russia and China as they are outspending our World Service investment by multiples of thousands. The Russians and the Chinese are together investing billions of dollars in their state-backed services, massively expanding their operations across Africa, South Africa and the Middle East, and they are outspending our World Service investment. The reality is that we are now entering an information Cold War, with the UK's democratic integrity and national security at stake. How is broadcasting on long-wave radio, quite a boring thing, a problem with our national security? I don't get it. And all the places you're talking about, like India's the most populous country in the world now, South Africa, the Middle East, Indonesia, all the places mentioned here, they all have access to the internet. Put your propaganda out on that and save the £300 million a year. And why should the government fund it? That's more money the government's got to find, which puts taxes up. I'm not interested. I don't believe the World Service needs to be a thing in the days of the internet. Who has a radio that can... It's broadcast on long wave, isn't it? I believe in other countries. Might have to look into that a bit. Who the hell has one of them? Who? Can you even buy them anymore? I mean, I have a radio function on my iPhone, but it doesn't tune in. It comes off the internet. Get rid of it. Yeah, 300 million quid of TV licence fee funds to pay for government propaganda. If the government want to put propaganda out, let them pay for it. Why should the BBC do it? And also, wind your neck in and stop putting out so much propaganda. Just because Russia and China are doing it, look after your own country first and worry about the rest of the world later. Or is that just too sensible or too naive? Oh, I don't know. This is why I could never be a politician. Let me know what you think about it all down in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, because that way, hopefully, I'll see you in another video again soon. Well, no, hopefully. Ta-da.